We are continuing the decision statements. As you know, in the previous video, we talked about the if statements, and this video we will start with the switch statements. The switch statement provides you another flavor of the control structure in the context of C++. If you remember in the previous video, we talked about the if statement, and the if statement is all about this type of logic. You got an if syntax, and then you write some expression. So this expression is usually a Boolean expression, x greater than 5, that's an example. And then you do execute certain statements, some statements, and then you write else if some other expression that continues until we reach a point where we can tell else, and you go there. So that is a typical syntax of the if else statement. In comparison to that, the switch statement does exactly the same thing but in a different way. So you have to write switch. Switch is a C++ keyword. So what does that mean about the variable naming convention? So you cannot define a variable in C++, whose name is switch, because it's a reserved keyword in the language. So you write switch and then you write the switch expression, just like you did the if expression. You are writing the switch expression. Then you talk about different scenarios. You write the statements, then you break, and then you can have multiple cases, uh, one to many cases. And then there is a default, means if all the cases fail, then your program points to the default structure. So exactly like if you have if, else if, all the in at the end of all if else if statements, you have an else statement that if in case your logic, your data does not satisfy any logic provided by if else if statements, then it goes to the last element of the else statement. Similarly for switch, it goes to the default, um, to the default syntax. So we will talk about more. Just stay tuned. We are going to talk about more about it. Here's an example. A switch statement can use an integer variable. So let's say we have um, a logic like this. You have a string that contains the product description. Now think about a situation that you have a table, you have a data. Table means data. You have a data where you have multiple products. You have one to many product IDs. So this column is product ID, and this is the description. Okay. So if your product ID equals 1, you have a description. If it is 2, you have a different product description. So this table represents the table of the products, and each row represents one record. That means one product. So this table can contain multiple products. So here, uh, in order to describe the product description, in order to put the product descriptions together, following the concept of this table, you can switch on the product ID. If the case equals 1, let's say, then you are going to here, first row, then you have a product description, let's say hammer, then you do a break, you know then if it is if it is not, if you don't put the break keyword, then it will proceed. That's that's not what you want. We will see later. I mean, if we don't put any break, what's going to happen? Now, if the product ID equals 2, you have a different product description, which is a box of nails. But in general, your product has a default product description that is no product found. So if, let's say, if in your table, I mean, in the product ID, your customers supplies a data like, let's say, 10. So 10 is not included here. I mean, in your data definition, 1 and 2 are included. So 10 will say whenever the customer enters 10, if the product ID equals 10, then the statement that you will see in the product description is no product found for specified ID. My question is, what would you do if you were to write it in terms of if and else if? So that's a good question. So what you could do there is that you can say if product ID equals 1, then product description equals hammer, else if product ID equals 2, then product description equals box of nails, else product description equals no product found for specified ID. That would be like that. Now let's try to understand what is the significance of the break keyword here. What break does here is that once you put break, it immediately breaks the logic in the switch statement. It goes, is exits the switch statement and go to the next level of the code. Let's say after the switch statement you have some other lines of code written here. So it goes to these other lines. So once you put a break, then it is no longer running the logic of the switch statement. If you fail to put break, then it will go down to other cases. Ultimately, it will go down to default until it finds some break. So be careful to include break whenever you do the switch statements. Okay? To understand this, let's try to write a code that involves a switch statement. Okay? So let's clean it up. This is our template for writing the code. So what we can do here is pretty simple. Let's put a simple code here, like, just a second, let me come up with this one. So let's do it as follows. So the first line is include IO stream, that does not go away. The second line is using namespace std. We talked about it before. Now in the main program, what we are doing here, let's do a welcome to uh, CS 101. Let's say that's where we are doing here. Now what we are doing is pretty much a program to illustrate the concept of switch case without the break statement in C++. Okay, let's include the line breaks in terms of end line. Okay, so SW is the variable to run the switch case with. Let's do the, I mean, let's say we are doing, we are entering the switch with SW equals 1. This is the value of the variable. So typically, if you would put a break here, let's say we consider the ideal situation, I mean, typical copybook situation where we have break followed by every switch statement, every case statement. And let's do this here. So if you do that, let's say you run it. So So your program will give you inside case 1 and it will not do anything else because it's a graceful situation. Think of a situation when you don't have this break statement. I'm deleting every break statement from here. Now run the program. So when you run the program, you see here, although we entered the switch block with 1, the switch variable as 1, but it goes through every cases. It goes to case 2, case 3, case 4. I mean, every block it is going to hit, and then it will do whatever the executable program there. So that will potentially mess up the intent to use the switch statement. But then, is there any situation when you do not want to use break? The answer is yes, there can be a situation. I mean, there may be a situation that you want something like or statement, like you want a logic to go no matter what, if you are case number 1, 2, or 3, do the same thing. So then typically what you would do, you don't use this one. In the case 3, you can say uh, do the work, whatever work the program intends to do the work, and then you put a break. Okay? So guess what? What is going to happen? Let's say you have a cout and you are asking the user um, provide or give the input switch variable value. Okay, that is SW, value of SW, and then you do cin and you are writing SW, whatever value you are providing. Now if you are providing anything like if you are providing anything like 1, 2, or 3, it will fall back. And basically what is going to happen is that it will simply do the it will go to do the work. I mean, it doesn't matter if case equals 1 or case equals 2 or case equals 3, it will do the same thing. But afterwards, whenever you go to case equals 4 and onwards, you have to put the break statement so that you have like different logic that will be running. Okay, so let's try this program as an illustration. So you go there and now let's give the value, let's say 2. So when you do the 2, you go to do the work, because it doesn't matter if you put 1, 2, or 3, it doesn't matter. It will go to this do the work place. But then if you put something different from 1, 2, or 3, so let's say you are putting a value of 5, then you are getting inside case 5, and you have a break statement, so it does not go it does not move ahead in the switch statements. Now let's say you are putting 0, which is kind of no way nowhere. So if you put a 0, it goes to the default case and you are getting a default value. So does it make sense now? Like, if we don't, what are the use cases when we don't use anything here, 1, 2, 3? So that means it doesn't matter if you put switch variable to be 1, 2, or 3, you have the same block of code executed. That's why you don't do the break statement anywhere. But then once you put the break statement, it will basically exit the switch block. It will go here. Okay, so the break is meant to exit from the switch block. So that's something we should remember. So this was an example, for instance, I mean that just now I illustrated, you know, if the day of the week is 1 to 5, we can say this is a weekday, or and then if the day of the week is 6 or 7, we say weekend, and that's how it works. This logic works. Try to come up with a if statement for this one. This is a homework exercise. You can say, I mean, it's not something assigned homework, but I'm asking you to think about it, try to write up some code, put them in the discussion. Now, there are typical use cases when you can use the switch statements is a menu system. So let's say you have a movie like Netflix, but that operates in C++, and that's a command line tool. So there are three menus here: list all movies, add a movie, and then three is exit. So in this case, you are listing all movies. I mean, whenever you have the menu item equals one, you do certain things. You basically list everything. If you have a menu item equals two, you add a movie, and if you do three, it simply exits. Okay. Uh, what will be the exact structure of one, two, or three? We are not mentioning here, but it's a typical switch use case for a switch statement. Okay, so you can I mean you can try implementing this code. So what it does when it is one, it will do the movie list. We don't have any movie list here, but we can do it in the later part of the course. Case 2, you can do add a movie. I mean, so you are basically adding something. And case 3, you are saying buy, and it's a break. And by default, you can say the invalid menu item. So let's say you are inputting case 2, 2 in the input, then you will hit this block, and it will say add a movie. Let's say you put case equals 5, I mean your menu item equals 5, then none of 1, 2, 3 will satisfy, so it will say invalid menu item, try again. Now if we say menu equals 1, it will display the movie list. If you say movie equals 3, it will say buy, and the block will break. Okay, so I think we are done with this. I mean, you can do multiple exercises from the slides and try to answer your assignment questions, the lab questions, and we can go from there. Okay. So in this particular module, we have learned in details about the control structure in C++ that contains switch statements and mostly the if else statements and the switch statements.